Brandon Bourdeaux may be the luckiest guy on the planet. He was labeled as a zombie, and this guy narrowly escaped being murdered when Alex Cox tried to kill him. Now, he's convinced that Lori Daybell and Alex Cox, and maybe even his former wife, conspired to murder him. So why was this guy targeted? Well, welcome to Profiling Evil. In this episode, I hope you'll take a moment, hit that like and subscribe button, and ring the bell so you're getting all of our videos. And please consider sharing us with your friends. But for now, I want to talk about Lori Vallow Daybell's newest criminal charge of attempted murder. It's now in Arizona. And we're going to also touch on the fact that she's got a motion in front of the court to have a redo on her trial. We'll catch that at the end of the video. But in fact, the day following her murder conviction for killing her child, Tylee Ryan, her stepchild, J.J. Joshua Vallow, and frankly, he's not a stepchild. He was adopted by Charles and Lori, and conspiring to commit murder against her new husband, Chad Daybell's wife, Tammy Daybell. Arizona officials put out an official statement saying that they were bringing charges against Daybell for conspiracy to commit murder against Brandon Bourdeaux. Now remember, she's also facing murder charges in the death of her former husband, Charles Vallow.
The jury convicted Lori Vallow of murdering her 2 children and conspiring to kill her husband's first wife. Fox 10 has learned that she's facing even more charges here in Arizona.
A Maricopa County grand jury has indicted her for conspiring to kill her niece's former husband. Justin Lum joins us now with more on this tonight. Justin.
And Mark, Christina, the hits just keep on coming for Lori Vallow. This indictment was handed down in February of last year while the late Alistair Adele was the county attorney. But there was no official sign of this record until we uncovered it. Now, Gilbert police believe Lori and her brother Alex Cox conspired together to kill Brandon Bourdeaux back in October of 2019. Brandon was once married to Lori's niece, Melanie Pawloski. The attempt on his life happened as he was pulling into his driveway at his Gilbert rental. He told police that someone in a gray Jeep Wrangler pointed a gun out of the window and opened fire. He was not hit, but at the time, Brandon believed his ex-wife could have been involved because she was one of the few people who knew where he lived. He had only been there for a few weeks. Investigators also have video footage from a storage facility in Idaho showing Alex and Lori unloading a back seat and a spare tire from, you guessed it, a gray Jeep Wrangler. Detectives have digital evidence that puts Alex Cox in the Gilbert area near the time of the shooting. And you may remember, Alex died of natural causes in December of 2019, meaning Lori is the only one being charged in this shooting. And this isn't the only crime she's being linked to here in Arizona. She's also been indicted on a charge of conspiring to kill her 4th husband, Charles Vallow. He was shot and killed by Alex Cox in July of 2019. Detectives initially deemed it self-defense. As for Lori, she's awaiting sentencing for the murder of her kids, Tylee Ryan and J.J. Vallow, and the conspiracy charge for Tammy Daybell's death. After that, she will be extradited back here to Maricopa County to face these charges. In the studio, Justin Lum, Fox 10 News.
Well, as we prepare for this case to unfold, let's go back to 2019 and talk about what the precipitating events were that led up to this attempted murder on Brandon Bourdeaux. It was back July 19th, 2019, when Charles Vallow was shot to death by Lori's brother, Alex Cox. Now, Cox apparently got away with murder, saying he acted in self-defense. But after reviewing everything that was going on in that group, police have come back and they're putting the focus on Lori Daybell for that murder now. After Charles' death, Lori took her kids, Tylee and JJ, to their new home in Rexburg, Idaho. The reason for the move, they say, is because she needed to just get away. In fact, what she was doing was meeting up with Chad Daybell, someone she was having an affair with, and their doomsday plan was going into full swing. Within days, Tylee and JJ would disappear off the map. Well, we now know that they were murdered, and their bodies were buried in Chad Daybell's pet cemetery behind the house. Within days of Tylee and JJ's disappearance and frankly murders, somebody pulled near Brandon Bourdeaux's home down in Arizona and waited for him to pull up in his driveway. When he did, Brandon noticed that the back window of the Jeep popped open and a weapon came out of the Jeep. In fact, the Jeep mysteriously resembled a vehicle that was owned by Charles Vallow, and he made a mental note of that. But he noticed a rifle with a what appeared to be a silencer on the end of the rifle poking out of the back window. And then the man holding the rifle, someone that he thought looked mysteriously like Alex Cox, Lori Vallow's brother, fired the weapon at him. The bullet struck Brandon's vehicle right next to him. Immediately after firing the weapon, the window closed, and the driver and the assailant, same person, drove off. He wasn't able to follow him, but he did call police immediately. Now, what Bourdeaux didn't realize is that his wife was now aligned fully with Lori and Chad Daybell and their cult. She and Brandon were going through a divorce, and Brandon told police that he was convinced that his estranged wife had something to do with what was going on. Now, I don't know if that's ever been established as fact, and it's going to be really interesting to see what happens going forward. But several days later, Chad Daybell's wife, Tammy, suddenly died in her sleep, and within days, she was buried. Well, after a couple of weeks of mourning, Chad Daybell apparently got over his wife, this woman he'd been married to for decades, the mother of all his children, and he jetted off to Hawaii, where he married Lori Vallow, who's now Lori Vallow Daybell. Well, now that Lori's been convicted of murder, and now that some of the evidence that convicted her is clearly out in front, coming from Brandon Bourdeaux's testimony, Brandon's theory of who tried to kill him has more relevance. But the question remains, why would they want to kill Brandon Bourdeaux? Well, I think it boils down to the doomsday cult that Lori Daybell and a group of like-minded people were part of. I mean, sure, Bourdeaux and his wife were going through a bitter divorce, but now the religious voodoo, including that talk of zombies, was introduced into the tightly knit inner circle of cult members. Bourdeaux's private investigator would state, and this is really interesting, quote, "It's terrifying to think that they had this belief that they could kill people to further whatever end they had in mind, whether it was religious or financial," close quote. Man, what a telltale quote that is. Well, so was naming Brandon Bourdeaux a zombie part of a plan to justify killing him so that his ex-wife, and now allegedly a member of this doomsday cult, could get her children and all of the family joined assets? This thing seems eerily like the scenario surrounding Joe Ryan's death and that of even Charles Vallow's death. Now, you remember, Ryan's death put money into Lori Vallow's hands. Lori thought that she was going to receive more than $1 million from Charles's death, but boy, wasn't she surprised. It was a proven strategy, though, that was working, and that was part of what she was convicted on in court. A strategy that led to a money train, and it certainly needs to be considered as part of the motive for why Brandon Bourdeaux was targeted. Or was this zombie talk and all the religion just part of their delusions and all focused merely on religion? Regardless, to date, Brandon's former wife has not faced any criminal charges in the case. And it's going to be interesting to see if anything unfolds on that case further as it moves along. But last night, I joined Michael Ayala on Court TV to talk about the case a little bit further, and our conversations kind of drifted back to some older news, but it was certainly relevant news, and I wanted to share that. Michael. Well, hey folks, I'm pausing to share some concerns I have surrounding identity theft and fraud. I've learned a lot from our partner, Aura. They're the pros at protecting people from cyber predators. Aura provides identity theft protection, credit and fraud protection, and online and device security for you and your family. They taught me to think twice before answering those online questionnaires designed to steal our personal information. You know, it must be working because U.S. statistics show that 33% of us have been victimized by identity theft at an annual cost of more than $56 billion each year. Aura protection plans come with around-the-clock support, a money-back guarantee, and $1 million theft policy. But here's the best part. You can try Aura for free by clicking on this special Profiling Evil link in the description down below. When you do, we get a small commission. But think about it. You insure your car and you insure your house. Don't you think it's time to insure your identity? Now let's get back to today's discussion. Michael wanted to explore a little deeper Lori Vallow Daybell's actions at the time Charles Vallow was murdered, and immediately what happened after. Now, remember that Charles was murdered just days before Lori's children, JJ and Tylee, were murdered, or they were reported as missing, but we now know they were murdered. And these kids were murdered just a few days before the attempt on Brandon Bourdeaux's life. And wasn't it interesting that Tammy Daybell died within about a week of the attack on Brandon Bourdeaux? What made this discussion so important, I think, was the organized manner in which Charles Vallow's death was executed. I mean, it gives us some sense of the control that Lori apparently had in planning and collaborating with others to pull off these multiple homicides. Let's watch that exchange.
What I want to do now is bring in our guests. Joining me tonight from Salt Lake City, Utah. First, private investigator Jason Jensen. Also with us, retired police commander, host of the Profiling Evil podcast, and author of Deceived, Mike King. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me here. And unfortunately, about 6 months later, Charles Vallow would be shot and killed by Lori's brother, Alex Cox. Now, Lori, Alex, and Lori's teenage daughter, Tylee, all spoke with police after the shooting in recorded interviews. Here's some of what they said.
Charles was following Lori and yelling, and Tylee told him to get back. She took her bat like that and shoved him, and he took the bat away. And I said, "What are you doing?" And I got between them, and then he hit me, and I just went down, and when I got up, he was still yelling. And so I went into the bedroom where I was staying, grabbed my gun, and I came back.
Okay.
And told him to put the gun down, or the bat down. And he came to me and was saying, what are you gonna do? Like that, and come to me with the bat. I said, put it down. He wouldn't. He came at me, so.
I was kind of turned around, and we were all right there in that room, except for the kids had been outside by that time, and I heard the gunshot.
Mm-hmm.
And
so you heard the shot?
mm-hmm.
Did you actually see the shot, or did you just hear it?
I had gone around to the kitchen to get away from him, and so back around. So I don't know if you went in the house.
I didn't, so I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage.
Yeah, so I didn't see the shot. I heard it, and then I came back around and I saw that he was on the ground.
Okay.
And was freaking out.
Yeah.
And so I was just freaking out, and it just went into mama. I'm like, I've got to go to get JJ to school. I've got to get to the kids. I just felt like I got to get to the kids.
I just kind of stuck the baseball bat out there, and then he just grabbed it and tried to take it. So I held on to the end, and then eventually I fell, and he kind of took it into his hands like he was going to do something with it. And my mom said to go with JJ, and so I ran out the door, and then I kind of just stood there with my little brother. He was in the front seat of the car, and so I just kind of opened the door and just stood there, and he was trying to get out, and I was like, no, we have to stay. I have to stay in. And I was like, oh, I told him, do you want to go in the Jeep? And then he was like, no, and then I realized that my car was blocked in, so I couldn't anyways. I was like, okay, like, just stay here. And then eventually my mom came out, and then we left from there.
Now, at the time, Arizona police determined the shooting was in self-defense, and Alex Cox was never charged with killing Charles. But in June of 2021, after Lori was charged in Idaho with the deaths of Tylee, JJ, and Tammy Daybell, Lori was then indicted in Arizona for conspiring to kill Charles Vallow, along with her brother Alex Cox, who we know also died in December of 2020. All right, let's do it. Jason Jensen, Mike King. Mike, now I get a chance to get back to you. Part of what the juror was talking about, and we heard about the breaking news previously, was the investigations into these crimes. And it's interesting, we just heard Lori, Tylee, and Alex talking to police. We believe that Lori actually lied in that interview. Tylee kind of tells the same story. Give us some of the background around that particular day for Lori, because there's some suggestion and some video with her at a Burger King that maybe she wasn't at the scene of that shooting that day.
Boy, Michael, isn't that the thing that's so intriguing and quite frustrating about this? She gives this hand motion that says she goes into that kitchen. Well, if you've looked at those floor plans closely, she goes into the left side facing the kitchen, the big glass mirror, and Charles would be standing right here at that point. She goes into the kitchen and she comes out at the feet of Charles after the shooting. She doesn't stop and check his pulse or dial 911 or say, Alex, what have you done? Or Alex, are you okay? What she does is she walks past her husband who's just been murdered. She walks past her brother who's standing there with a gun. She goes out and gets in a car and drives to a local fast food restaurant where she orders breakfast for JJ. She then goes and she purchases a pair of, I think, shoes, some thongs for him, flip-flops. I got to keep up with the times, and takes him to school. And it's nearly an hour later before she returns to that house. And there's no phone call in between of, hey, Alex, did you call 911? Or no call from her. I had to get my kids out of there, and I'm calling 911 to say get over there. She's just going about business and then coming back and trying to fix what entirely appeared, and I think the jury believed was a staged event.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And what's interesting is, though, there was a claim of self-defense. They have a statement from Alex Cox. Mike King, thank you so much for joining me tonight. We always appreciate your insights. Folks, coming up next.
So what's the common thread? I mean, they were all people who were determined that these others were zombies. They focused on them as zombies, or at least that's the religious twist they put on it to justify murder. These were people who were thwarting Lori and Chad's destructive cult directions. Well, the bottom line is Lori Daybell has some monumental hurdles ahead of her. She's got this conspiracy to commit murder with Brandon Bourdeaux. She faces conspiracy to commit murder charges with Charles Vallow's death. And things in Idaho, they just aren't getting buttoned up, folks, because just yesterday, Lori Daybell's attorneys filed a motion requesting a new trial. Their claim was that the court misdirected the jury and their instructions in a number of areas. The conspiracy and the instructions related to the amended indictment. They were stating claims that jurors were complaining that the jury instructions were confusing. So here's what my question is for each of you. What are your thoughts on all of this that's going on? I mean, do you think the court's going to allow Lori Daybell to have a do-over and take her trial back and do it once again? And what do you think is going to happen with Brandon Bourdeaux's case or with Charles Vallow's case? I hope you'll put your answers down below, and we'll continue to cover this cult case, and we'll talk about the cult behaviors as this thing moves forward. I mean, this is a never-ending event, I'm afraid. So, I hope you'll take a moment, check out the Chad and Lori Daybell story map. Hey folks, it's Mike from Profiling Evil, and I want to just take a quick minute to remind you about the Chad and Lori Daybell story map. You can find it at profilingevil.com under story maps, and I hope you'll go over and visit it. It gives you a chance to go through and kind of explore this case from beginning to end. has all kinds of information about those first hearings, about what happened. But then I think one of the things that's pretty dang cool is it goes in and it talks about them individually. Not only has an overview, but it has a way to check out more about Lori, her former husbands, where she lived, Chad and his former wife, Tammy, and the circumstances leading up to her death. You can learn more about what light and dark is, according to them, and actually hear Chad speaking at one of those Preparing a People conferences. You can go into other family members like Stacy Cope, Joseph Ryan, Charles Vallow, Alex Cox, JJ and Tylee. You can look at the court processes, and you can get a little more information about profiling evil. So again, I hope you'll go back and check that out. Now let's get back to the program. And make sure you've hit that like and subscribe button, folks, so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. And please consider joining our channel memberships. You can check us out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and here on YouTube. And you can also find Profiling Evil on your favorite podcast platform. Hey, thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon at the next crime scene.